Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll get started in just a moment. My name is Katie Poser. I'm with the NOAA Central Library and will be the technical host today. If you have any technical issues, such as you can't hear the speakers or you can't see the slide deck, try logging off and back on to GoToWebinar, as that solves most problems. Also, check your audio input or output. It could be trying to connect to a Bluetooth that you have or a different headset, so that may be your audio troubles. Also, we are recording this session today, so by you attending, you are agreeing to have any questions or comments and just your presence recorded for this seminar. Also, if you do need to step away or would like to share this with a colleague, the recording will be up on the library's YouTube channel. With that, we will be taking questions, but they will be held until the end of the panel and will be subject to our timing. Now, with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Kapnick to discuss the 2022 NOAA Science Report.
Welcome, everyone. It is my honor and privilege to introduce NOAA's 7th annual Science Report. NOAA is the nation's premier ocean, weather, atmospheric, and climate agency. We have a deep commitment to science, service, and stewardship, and the Science Report is a great representation of how NOAA's research and development efforts impact society. First, a little background on the Science Report. The NOAA Science Report is an annual report that highlights NOAA's research and development achievements. The first report was written as the NOAA Chief Scientist's Annual Report in 2016. The Science Report is now developed as a NOAA Science Council product by the Research and Development Enterprise Committee, or RDEC, and published as a technical memorandum. The Science Report is intended for a wide audience, including the U.S. Congress and NOAA partners. The Science Report is structured around and intended to track and communicate progress towards the NOAA research and development vision areas. 1, reducing societal impacts from hazardous weather and other environmental phenomena. 2, sustainable use and stewardship of ocean and coastal resources. And 3, a robust and effective research, development, and transition enterprise. NOAA's R&D enterprise spans observations of the environment, developing models and tools to support forecasting and prediction of future states and ensuring equitable access to these vital resources. Each link in the value chain has an important implication for society, and the accomplishments in the Science Report all connect to these societal outcomes. You can find this year's report on the Science Council website, sciencecouncil.noaa.gov. Now, I'm excited to introduce our 6 panelists, who I welcome to turn on their web cameras right now so I can start to introduce them. Each panelist contributed to science stories and accomplishments highlighted in this year's report. First, Kimberly McMahon is a Public Weather Service Program Manager at the NOAA National Weather Service. Kim will be speaking on the wet bulb global temperature forecast becoming operational. Kim guides national policy involving extreme temperatures, both heat and cold, wind, frost freeze, fog, dust, and other weather phenomena. She oversees the policies, procedures, products, and services of 122 local National Weather Service forecast offices. She is also a co-lead of the National Integrated Heat Health Information System, also known as NIHIS, founded by the NOAA and the Centers for Disease Control, to coordinate and collaborate on research initiatives and messaging regarding heat and heat health across federal agencies. Next up, we have Dr. Saeed Moghimi, who works on the storm surge modeling team in NOAA's National Ocean Service, leading the development of the world's highest resolution global storm surge model, and will speak about his work today. Saeed leads all related capability efforts for the operational storm surge and tide forecast system, such as research and development, research to operation, operational support, regular upgrades and maintenance, and skill assessment and dissemination. Next, we have Dr. Oli Shelton, who is from NOAA's Northwest Fisheries Science Center. He has joined us today to talk about NOAA's efforts using environmental DNA, or eDNA, to measure fish populations and support our West Coast fisheries. Oli is a research ecologist at the Northwest Fisheries Science Center in Seattle. He works on developing methods for understanding the abundance and distribution of marine species using both traditional and emerging technologies, such as eDNA. Next, we have Dr. Noelle Bowlin, who is a program lead for the California Cooperative Oceanic Fisheries Investigations Program. She will speak about the NOAA Fisheries 86-day survey from Canada to Mexico. Dr. Noelle is a fisheries biology researcher at NOAA's National Marine Fisheries Service. Working at the Southwest Fisheries Science Center in La Jolla, California, she is a NOAA program lead and a manager of teams conducting cruises to monitor marine species and the effects of climate variability in the California current ecosystem. Research is also being done on the early life history dynamics of species such as sardine, anchovies, and mackerels. Noelle has a long-standing commitment to diversity issues and understands that women and other underrepresented groups face barriers to science. She's an active member of the NOAA Southwest Fisheries Science Center team for Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Working Group. Next, we have Dr. Matthew Bethel, who is an Associate Executive Director for Research at Louisiana Sea Grant at Louisiana State University. He has joined us today to talk about Sea Grant's collaboration with the Pointe-au-Chien Indian tribe to support climate adaptation planning in coastal Louisiana. He is responsible for managing Louisiana's Sea Grant research and fellowship programs and also leads a research program based on his 20+ years of experience in the applications of geospatial technology for transdisciplinary research that addresses data and information needs for combined social and ecological decision support systems. And last up, our sixth panelist, we have Dr. Shobha Kondragunta, who is an air quality remote sensing scientist working with NOAA's National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Service. She leads the Aerosols and Atmospheric Composition Science team. Shobha leads her team in developing aerosols and trace gas algorithms for decision support systems at NOAA and other agencies. These products are instrumental for air quality forecasting at global and regional scales. She is here to speak on the expansion of crucial air quality observations to millions of people in rural areas. She is also a member of the White House National Science and Technology Council Air Quality and Community Health Research Subcommittee and is co-leading the working group on air quality characterization and community engagement. Now that we've introduced our incredible panel, we can begin our discussion. So to start, I wanted to ask the question of a couple of you. What was the most exciting or interesting part of this accomplishment or project? Let's start with you first, Kim.
Thanks, Dr. Kapnick. To me, the most exciting part of operationalizing the wet bulb globe temperature forecast, which I'll refer to as WBGT, is that NOAA National Weather Service can meet the specific needs of our partners and customers. We're able to provide another heat stress indicator that's used by military, athletic associations and departments, outdoor event planners, and other stakeholders to plan and prepare our communities for heat. And a little background for everyone. The wet bulb globe temperature was developed in the 1950s by the US military to address high numbers of heat illnesses that were occurring at their training camps. And it's really designed to assess heat stress on healthy individuals who are acclimated to working outdoors with high physical activity levels. In recent years, the wet bulb globe temperature use has expanded to other active outdoor communities such as USA Soccer. And there's been an increase in demand from Weather Service partners for WBGT forecast information to help decision makers understand forecast heat stress out to 7 days in advance. The Weather Service WBGT uses widely accepted heat thresholds based on Grunstein et al. 2015's work, the study of regional heat safety thresholds across the continuous United States. So 3 regions were defined based on the 90th percentile warm season daily maximum value of WBGT for 217 stations. Starting with region 3, which has the highest wet bulb globe temperature climatology, It encompasses much of southeastern US, portions of the Southwest, and the Central Valley of California. Now, Region 2 extends in an arc from interior Northwest through Nevada and portions of the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Northeast. Region 1, which has the lowest wet bulb globe climatology of the three regions, includes the Pacific Coast, New England, and northern tier of the country. The Weather Service WBGT forecasts are available across the lower 48 states, Hawaii, and Guam, with consistent service delivery to inform decision makers and prevent heat illness and even death. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I want to ask the same question of Ollie. What was the most exciting or interesting part of your accomplishment and project?
Yeah, thank you. My work is about trying to bring environmental DNA into existing surveys for marine species for NOAA. And the most exciting part of this is just demonstrating that environmental DNA, which is basically trace amounts of a species in bottles of water, can be used at large spatial scales and with sufficient accuracy to make predictions about the distribution and abundance of species. And so the most exciting part of this is taking a sort of an abstract idea that you can see traces of a species in the water to using it for something that's directly management relevant. So in this case, we take individual water samples taken during major NOAA surveys and convert them into indices of abundance that can be used for stock assessment to better manage a large stock on the US West Coast, in this case, hake. And so for me, the most exciting part is taking something very abstract and sort of developing technology and bringing it into the management realm. And this involves a bunch of different components. First off, you just have to use lots of information and lots of technical getting water from out in the middle of nowhere during our surveys. So simply collecting the water is a major part. The second part is converting those water samples into something measurable about hake in this case. And the third is being able to combine them together and compare them with existing surveys to improve our estimates of biomass for that feed into surveys and feed into how you directly manage an important species in this case. So that's exciting. I also think the second most exciting part is how it opens doors to looking at other species. So we can look at hake, but the same methodology applies to all sorts of different species, from whales to forage fish to your favorite marine species. And so it opens doors to looking at a whole suite of other species in the future.
Thank you. And next, Matt, what did you found?
Sure, thank you, Dr. Kapnick. So the basic concept of the project that I'm sharing today was to develop an innovative way to include genuine perceptions of locals into the scientific process that informs and supports climate adaptation and resilience planning. And the partnering community that we worked on this pilot study with is the Pointe-au-Chien Indian Tribe community, and they are located in Lower Terrebonne, Lafourche parishes in South Louisiana. And they live and work in the surrounding marsh areas that include diverse natural resources, as well as cultural resources, birds, plants, animals, fish, cemeteries, sacred sites, and even abandoned village sites. Historically, the tribe members were fishers, hunters, and farmers. And while Pointe-au-Chien continues to be a fishing community, climate-related hazards threaten its continued existence and ability to thrive. So sea level rise, a tremendous amount of land loss, and storms are impacting this community. And adaptation measures taken by tribal members have not been sufficient to withstand increased tropical storm impacts because of the loss of much of their traditional lands to open water, which exposes the community to greater storm surge and more frequent flooding. The latest of which was Hurricane Ida, Category 4, almost a 5, devastating impacts to the community in August of 2021. The community is still recovering from that hurricane. But the tribe is developing a comprehensive community-based strategy to become more resilient to future storms. And our project was one aspect of that strategy, that overall strategy that the tribe is taking. And one really exciting thing, in addition to providing a resource that can inform short and long-term local planning, the tribe saw added value in the mapping outputs and the process we use to develop those maps. For example, the tribe is a state-recognized tribe, and they saw how the maps could aid their petition for federal recognition, as well as to help communicate our voice, their needs and priorities externally with other partners, with state, federal agencies, to build support for protection restoration projects in their traditional lands to preserve and protect the community and its unique cultural heritage. One other thing, also the co-development approach we have taken with this type of research with the partnering community provides some real leverage and a sense from them that they have a genuine opportunity for input. And for example, even though they weren't familiar with the remote sensing and geographic information systems, the GIS, that we were using, the participating tribe members almost immediately understood the output maps that were produced using these technologies, because they knew the area so well that they easily identified with the maps and had been consulted through the development process so that they understood how they were produced. They could relate to them because the ideas and concerns represented in the GIS format came from them. This was not only really satisfying to see, but important, since the aim was to produce a decision support tool that would be useful for them.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you want to comment next, Noelle?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kapnick. This is also interesting to listen to everybody talk about their work. This is pretty cool. But yeah, so you know, for this survey, this 86-day survey that my team and I were a part of between Canada and Mexico, this is actually something we've been doing, not going all the way into Mexican waters, but we started in the routinely sampling between Canada and the southern end of California for the coastal pelagic species, sardines, anchovies, herring, things like that, to get you know, information to characterize the habitat of these species that we manage, spawning area, spawning time, those types, and other demographics, understanding growth and reproduction. So this is something that we've been doing to provide better information for both biomass assessment, stock assessment. But what's most exciting about this project that we just finished is that we were able to expand this survey into Mexican waters, because many of these species that I just mentioned are transboundary, right? They don't see the difference between US EEZ, Canada EEZ, or Mexico EEZ. So our ability to get to collaborate with our colleagues in Mexico was just phenomenal, because as we all know, answering any question at any degree of complication, collaboration is key. And so we got to work together, and it wasn't just you know, our Mexican colleagues in the fisheries realm, but it's also industry. We work with industry vessels, and as well as sail drones. So incorporating uncrewed technologies to get some more information, try to get as many components as we can to understand what's happening with these species. And so, but again, just to highlight, what's most exciting to me about this project was collaborating with Mexico, and we did it during the pandemic in 2021. That was, whew, that added, I'm sure everyone here understands it, everybody in the audience, that layer of complication was real. It was thick and real. But yeah, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything else they want to add after hearing from their counterparts? Okay. I'll go on to the next question I have here, which is, it's just, I love hearing about all the science that takes place in the agency. It's always so amazing to hear about it. And I thought the audience would like to know, can you speak to the length of the time it takes for this research to go from start to finish? Because I think we often don't talk about what it takes to do some of the science. Noelle just commented a little bit on that, but Shobha, would you like to go next and comment on how long it takes and what it took to get there?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Kapnick, for that question. So the time it takes for a project to go from inception to completion varies. It can take a few months to a few years. A particular application that a user needs sometimes may need only a simple task like reformatting, in which case the task on hand is easy for us. So let us say we have a product that we develop from our 2 geostationary satellites, goes east and goes west. A user might come in and say, oh, I want the information, but don't want to deal with the 2 different files. I don't care which satellite gives me the information. Then what we do is just simply blend the 2 products into one, which is just a very simple exercise that takes just a few months. A different application may require the development of a new product, in which case we have to develop a methodology, a concept, and build a project plan around that concept, do the research and development work, evaluate and validate the product, work with the user to make sure that that is what the user wants, and then that the user is happy, and then finally deploying the product. All of this can take a few years. So my air quality project with EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, falls into the later category. So what we are trying to do is provide fine particulate pollution information from satellites at high spatial and temporal resolution for EPA to fill in the information gap that exists between the monitors. So right now we are 2 years into this project and need maybe 1 more year or so to wrap it up. So in a simple way to say, it depending on the task, it may just take a few months or a few years.
Yeah, I'm always amazed. Sometimes we're able to do it quickly, and sometimes it's a longer time to get that produced. Saeed, I saw you nodding along. Do you want to add anything from your experience? Oh, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, I got it finally. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if I may, I want to talk about it from like other challenges point of view that we face. I don't know if I can maybe segue a little bit to the challenges.
Yeah, so instead of the triumphs, please tell us the challenges you have encountered.
Right. So, I mean, luckily we will be able to come up with some solutions, but I think we are all at NOAA. We want to engage with the community and build partnerships with public, academia, and private sectors to accelerate research to operation processes. So that's basically what I am kind of thinking about. In particular, we as a modeler, numerical modeler at NOAA, we want to kind of take our numerical modeling capabilities and infrastructure to the next level. Based on my experience and observations, I want to kind of also talk a little bit about what I see, the challenges that I faced in the past couple of years. And I can kind of break down that in three main categories of challenges. So first of all, I like to talk about attracting and retaining talented and experienced researchers and workforce within NOAA. The second is sustainable and predictable funding to sustain and build strategic partnerships. I mean here with academia, with industry, private agencies, and so on. And then at the end, shared collaborative environments. Specifically, I'm talking about high performance computing environment that we can bring in our partners, not only NOAA employee and contractors, but also academia and other partners into the shared environment to can develop and test and collaborate together. To give you a bit more context here, so we are all living in a very ever-changing and fast-paced era, and workforce environment is not an exception. And it's getting more and more complicated and challenging specifically for federal agency to stay competitive, to attract people. I mean, we are talking about tech companies and so on. And so we want to kind of stay competitive in that era. And this is really one of the things that luckily we have a very good team, and we have a very talented people already on our team, but we still face this challenge on how to attract people with us. And also, as I said, it's very important also to have a sustainable partnership and building trust and grow partnership with academia and private and public and international institutions. But again, I want to go back to the third item, and in collaborative environment, high performance collaborative environment. So again, I want to call on NSF colleagues here, National Science Foundation colleagues, specifically Texas Advanced Computing Center, who was providing us this infrastructure. So then our academic partner and us can call in and log in and work together on the same environment. And we built this partnership more based on our, let's say, technical level or collegial level exchanges and within the past couple of years. However, we also start to initiate some type of interagency collaboration and talking at the same time, trying to see how other parts of NOAA, like EPIC program and other part of NOAA, can also help with providing this type of or sandboxes of collaborating environment. So I hope I didn't really have a great segue to the other side. But I really, meanwhile, I have a lot of nice and good news to share with the team. However, I thought that also is valuable and important to voice this part of the challenges that we are facing. I will stop here.
Thank you. And we overcome those challenges, and you've created this amazing storm surge modeling that has been highest resolution in the world, which is truly a triumph for us. Is there anyone else that wants to comment? We can either go to more of, you were kind of opening the door of like, what were the components and resources that were most valuable and helpful in contributing to the accomplishments that you've done? Or does anyone else want to talk about any of the challenges overcome through their research? I leave that open to the next person.
Dr. Kapnick, I can talk about challenges if you want me to.
Okay, we'll do challenge, and then we'll do someone talking about what has been really important to be able to do accomplishment. So Shobha, your challenge, and then we'll move.
Thanks. Yeah, so our project is with EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, as I mentioned before. And working with EPA can be slow at times, and for understandable reasons. So that's been a challenge for us. As I mentioned, it took 2 years into the project, and we have 1 more year to go to get to the last mile. But it's important to remember that EPA is a regulatory agency, and its public policy is mostly driven by observations made by ground monitors. EPA will never use satellite products to drive public policy, but satellite data can be used to fill in the gaps in between the monitors that EPA has. So we have to be really clever about approaching this on how to solve some of the issues of gaps in the observations that come from EPA's monitors. So historically, EPA located its monitors in urban areas. Makes sense, right? Because that's where people live. But in the current era, we are living more and more in suburban regions, exo-urban regions, and even in rural areas. So it's important to monitor these regions. And we understood that the satellite data can fill in these gaps, but it is our job to show that satellite data are a good proxy. So what we did was we worked with the EPA in a very collaborative way from the onset of the project. And what we did was like, okay, we've got this method. Let us demonstrate that this method is good, that the satellite products are viable. So we worked in a collaborative way with EPA and published actually a joint paper to demonstrate that the satellite products are good for monitoring pollution in regions where monitors are not present. So now we actually have a ground monitors reporting the air quality information, satellite data informing the same, and then we can actually use both in a very synergistic way to monitor pollution in regions where monitors do not exist. So there are these millions of people without information, or there is this information gap. So we are able to fill that information gap with our satellite data. So the challenge was like, it's difficult to make inroads with the EPA, but we actually did it in a very collaborative way.
That sounds incredible. It sounds like you're also like creating the quilt of bringing everything together of all the different data streams and making something out of that, which I noticed that Ale was really shaking his head when I was saying, does someone want to talk about what works for them? And with eDNA, bringing the data from multiple point locations, I think this is fitting to call on you next. Do you want to talk about important parts that was valuable and helpful in contributing to your accomplishment that you were talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing about trying something new is having a whole suite of people who are sort of putting their shoulder to the wheel and trying to push it to make it work. And in this case, that comes from both the NOAA level, in which case all of the work I'm talking about was funded through the NOAA Strategic Initiative for Omics, the Omics Strategic Initiatives that provided the person power and sort of impetus to go out and do these samples. But it also comes from a whole pile of people who are doing existing surveys, sort of bending over backwards to make this project work. And so in this particular case, it's the people on the boat, the Hake survey team, doing awesome work to figure out how to do this new sampling. It also involves all the people in the genetics lab processing these samples, which is not trivial and takes a lot of skill. And then also talking with the stock assessors and whatnot for trying to figure out how you use this data and how you connect these 3 or 4 different parts to what will ultimately be useful for the agency for management purposes. So in our case, it's all within NOAA. We don't have an external connection to the EPA or other places, but it is a lot of people that I'm sort of standing up in front of the room and representing, because there's no way on Earth this is a 1 or a 2-person job. It's a team of tens of people at different levels from different offices working together to make a sort of a new product for NOAA that might be, there's no guarantee at the beginning of this project that it would work at all. And so sort of the faith of all these folks coming together and producing what I think is a pretty, almost a magical product in terms of what you can get from environmental DNA that's useful for marine management.
How long did you have to wait when you were taking that leap of faith of this thing that might not work to be able to have some results that you felt like it did work?
The strategic initiative we put in 2017, and we didn't have results until 2020 or 2021. So 3 or 4 years of getting funding, getting samples, processing samples, doing analysis. So it's 3, 4 years, and there's more stuff coming out, but it is a 3, 4, 5, 6 year process. And the early parts of that, it doesn't look like it's going to work, or sort of half looks like it's going to work, and it only comes together at the very end. So it's a very slow bus, but it's been pretty successful so far.
I'm so excited about where we'll be talking about that. What will we be saying in 5 or 10 years from now? Does anyone else want to comment on what they thought was a really valuable step or piece of contributing to the accomplishment that you chose?
Yeah, Dr. Kapnick, I'll jump in. So kind of unlike, or on the extreme opposite end of the spectrum as been described by some of my colleagues on the process, really for the wet bulb globe temperature coming into the National Weather Service, it was a very much grassroots effort where individual local forecast offices were starting to receive requests from partners such as marathon organizations and other sports organizations. So our offices started receiving those requests and looking into how they could meet those requests for wet bulb globe temperature forecasts. And it had to eventually get filtered up through National Weather Service regions and National Weather Service headquarters for us to make a consistent algorithm and consistent service. So that way any office in the Weather Service can provide that information and in a consistent manner. And what I mean by that is using the same calculations such as the Dimicelli method, and as well as making sure that our sun angle and the calculation of that was being done in a very consistent way across the entire lower 48, as well as Hawaii and Puerto Rico and Guam. So that was certainly a challenge, and we didn't have a huge team to work on it. Thankfully, we do have some really great people that I'm able to represent today. So very grateful for that and being able to make something that's helpful and really did come from the ground up.
It's an important reminder about that as we head into heat season as well across the United States, to be thinking about that. I thought I would shift a little bit for us to talking about the impacts of NOAA's R&D on society. So the next question I wanted to ask you all is that NOAA's research and development contributes to impact society, whether it's in the development of new observing systems, a new way to analyze data, a new model to innovation, or a new forecast capability. But it's challenging to fully communicate how these accomplishments at all levels of NOAA R&D link to these specific outcomes. So can you tell us how your work links to products and services that have these critical impacts? And since you haven't spoken recently, Matt, can you answer the question first? Put you on the spot.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dr. Kapnick. Yeah, so the one thing that I wanted to point out, you know, as far as critical or crucial points related to our research projects, and this is specifically the kind of work we do, such as with the Pointe-au-Chien tribe. Through this, you know, work, it's really, you know, how we work with indigenous and other place-based communities. There must be respect for those the knowledge holders. So we call them the traditional ecological knowledge experts. Could be indigenous knowledge. There's lots of terms. I'll just use traditional ecological knowledge, TEK, for the purpose of this. And as well as research protocols to protect confidential TEK. So this begins with transparent communication, managing expectations, acknowledging and understanding ownership or sovereignty of knowledge, and establishing and maintaining trust among all involved in the research process. And I think, you know, we've talked about a lot of the panelists here. That seems to be a theme, you know, engagement, trust development, collaboration. Those are all themes that I think weave through our projects from what I'm hearing. And for us, what it was all about was listening, learning, then taking the time to share the science related to climate impacts and resilience, and recognizing the complementarity, I think I got, that's a tongue twister, but of the information shared. So what I mean by that is we created space for reciprocal knowledge transfer to help our local partners become more familiar with the capabilities, uncertainties, and limitations of scientific data and products, and how that information may complement their own knowledge systems. And so with NOAA, you know, I think there's a real opportunity, or, you know, connecting NOAA data, tools, and services at the local level can be challenging because, I mean, they're built on a national scale a lot of times, but, you know, working through NOAA's partners such as Sea Grant, but not exclusively Sea Grant, but who are tied in at the local level, I think, you know, could work together to collaboratively help refine and make those NOAA tools, data, and services more accessible to at the local level, but also more relevant to the local needs. And I think that's key. And you know, for instance, with our project, we utilized NOAA sea level rise modeling tools to do the outreach and engagement with our collaborating tribe, and to help them better understand what to expect. You know, where they were sharing what is most important from their perspective related to their sustainability in that ecosystem from generations of observations and living and depending on that dynamic ecosystem. And then we're able to share the latest science through NOAA, you know, such as sea level rise projections, and give them a suite, you know, that there's a range, let them understand the uncertainty in the models, and give them a range of possible sea level rise projections for their local area. And that was very informative for them because they were seeing how some aspects of their traditional lands that contribute most from their perception to their sustainability in that system would be impacted by future sea level rise. And then they could factor that in their long-term planning. So I think there's ways to link NOAA data tools and services at the local level and help, with NOAA partners like Sea Grant, help us address local needs.
Yeah, it sounds like your process has been very iterative with the groups that you're working with. Of engagement as the science is more advanced, you're then working to feedback, but also implement. Does anyone else want to answer this question of what links the products and services to these critical impacts? How do you think of those impacts on society?
So,
Yeah, if it's okay. Oh, sorry, Shobha, I'll go after you.
You can go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Let me do it. So, Dr. Kapnick, thanks. That's an excellent question because it's very important that what we do at NOAA makes and have the connection to the society and then benefits to the society. So the work we are doing with EPA has a tremendous environmental justice relevance, and we seem to be talking about environmental justice quite a bit these days. But I would like to actually rephrase it and say actually environmental injustice. Because what it really means, at least with respect to air quality anyways, is that some marginalized communities that are economically and racially disadvantaged are exposed to harmful levels of pollution compared to those that are privileged. So in the last decade or so, public health researchers have been using satellite data such as fine particulate pollution information, nitrogen dioxide, and so forth, to demonstrate these disparities, because now we are able to actually measure these from satellites at a very high temporal resolution and spatial resolution. So actually the health researchers are very excited to use our products. So our project, of course, with EPA provides fine particulate information from our geostationary satellites at high spatial resolutions, 2 kilometers or so, and temporal resolution of 1 hour. So we are working with health researchers in academia in characterizing air quality for these communities. People living near ports, train tracks, warehouses, industrial complexes, firefighters fighting fires and smoke and so forth. So air pollution by many means actually is a very successful story. We curbed urban industrial pollution due to EPA's enforcement of standards, but looking at that mostly at the county level and state level, but most of the US is in compliance. But what's happening is at these micro environmental levels where communities like near ports, train tracks, warehouses, industrial complexes, it is still bad for them. Pollution levels are really bad. The signal doesn't show up at the county level or state level, but in the environment that they are living in, it's pretty bad. So with our product, the goal for our study is really to collaborate with the public health researchers and to understand these microenvironments, characterize the air quality for these environments, and shed light on pollution exposure disparities. Thank you.
Thank you. And Noelle, please go.
Thank you. Thank you. This is an exciting question, Dr. Kapnick, because like Shobha pointed out so well, our jobs are varied, but we are all supposed to serve the people and the possibilities. That's what's so exciting. What are the possibilities that could come out of the research that we're doing? And so this big survey that we conducted to get demographic information and spawning time, area, that kind of stuff on these coastal pelagic species. Well, some of those species have multiple stocks for assessment, for management purposes, and they're transboundary. And I think the coolest thing is that, it's been 50 years since we've received, about 50 years since the US has received a permit to do this type of work in Mexican waters. And we didn't just send our ship there. What we did was we started this process with our Mexican colleagues, asking them, what would be most useful for you? How could we work together? And whereas for them, they said, well, you guys have really pushed the envelope in utilizing acoustic methods, and we want to do that too. And so we've been working with them to do that. And so Mexican colleagues joined us on our ship, and they got their ship out. There wasn't as much room for us on that year, but we have another survey with them coming up this year. And so the collaboration with an international collaboration, it has lots of possibilities, right? And it could potentially promote cooperation in all types of international collaborations with our Mexican colleagues, whether it's for science, whether it's for commerce, whether it's for ecotourism. I think that these kinds of things are very exciting to open up these lines of communication more and have more back and forth exchange of scientific methods, and the utility of information that could help manage the species that we eat. We provide information that helps us better manage the things that we all need to survive. And I think that that's very exciting. And it isn't just a bunch of scientists doing it, it's also fishing industry that's part of this. We are working with them because, it's like Matt says, there are different communities of people that are just complete experts in understanding how the environment works. Yes, we are experts in our narrow fields of science, but there are other people in other industries, like fishing industries, for instance, and we get to work with them and ask them what is useful. And our scientists work along with the fishermen on their vessels to help conduct this survey. And we are improving together. Again, I said earlier that collaboration is key, but together, industry, our Mexican colleagues and other scientists, we're all working together to find better ways to manage and find the information that's needed to do it. And I think that that's really exciting. And it could also, so that's just for fisheries management, but I think that for these transboundary stocks of fishes, but it also promotes cooperation for understanding the transboundary ecosystem. So I run an ecosystem monitoring program in addition to helping with this project. And it's something that we've done decades ago with Mexico, and we're in talks again on how to do that together. And I think that is just awesome, and I'm very excited about it. Thanks.
Thank you for leading our science-related diplomacy for us on this issue of fisheries. So I'm being pinged by our people from behind the scenes, so I will ask one last question of Saeed, and then we'll open it up to everyone, to the questions from the audience. So the last question from this group before we do that is, Saeed, can you explain what is on the horizon? What will some of NOAA's most impactful R&D accomplishments be in the next few years in your space?
Thank you very much for this excellent question. If I may, I will just give a very touch on a status of our work, and then I will extend it to the horizon in the future. So as you already mentioned, we are developing a surgeon-type operational forecast system. Basically, we are trying to have accurate water surface elevation prediction, and this is a very important. This type of information are very important for our U.S. national and global coastal intelligence, meaning we want to provide actionable information for two main important reasons: coastal resilience and disaster mitigation, and blue economy, including precision navigation. And to come up with this, basically, we developed high resolution on a meter scale global storm surge modeling system that capable of resolving very detailed infrastructure, right? Shorelines, levees, jetties, and so on to help American people feel safer. Even if we can wake up less number of people to evacuate from a hurricane attacking us, I feel much better. I mean, even if a small number of people waking up when they needed to wake up, or not waking up when they don't need. So these are the type of gain that we are working towards. And one of our newest features that just included in this 2023 upgrade was including inland hydrology effect or river flooding effect on coastal inundation and flooding. So we are, for the first time, we have operational system that right now it can capable of taking into account simultaneous inland flooding as well as high precipitation plus storm surge from the ocean. So this is a very exciting work me and my team, we are doing, including a lots of different partners from academia and industry. So looking into the future, we are now very excited that we are using the recent funding from Infrastructure Investment and Job Acts, and we are taking into really good challenges to operate our infrastructure. One of them is supporting National Hurricane Center in Florida to develop the next generation on-demand probabilistic storm surge forecast framework. And that's by itself is a very challenging task that we are taking on. And in parallel, we are also extending our global model to be a three-dimensional from a two-dimension, meaning we also want to give the mariners and other downstream users surface current, which is very important for a number of different applications, including search and rescue, pollution transport, and so on, and tourism, and lots of other applications down the line. So these are what we are looking at. And we also want to extend this three-dimensional capability that we already have in Atlantic to Pacific, to Alaska, and eventually to global 3D capability. Again, one idea that we want to have to make it into action is to engage the stakeholder and community in a regional level. We want to decentralize model development and have the communities, states, and regions to develop their own models based on their own priorities. And then we use it and insert it in our development global framework. So in that sense, we want to make sure everybody is collaborating and supporting these global activities. At the same time, we want to make sure we are providing support and making Americans and our nation feel better and have a higher quality of life in coastal areas. We want to also help other nations. We want to help underserved communities who are impacting by global changes like sea level rise or climate change, to make them also feel safer and support them with the data and modeling capabilities. Also, we want to coordinate with our international partners, the Europeans and others, to co-develop required technologies and help each other to advance into the future. So we think that working together is always better, and it helps us to be in a better place and provide a better future for our nation and global people. So I will stop here, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing. Ultimately, we are trying to make science to serve society and make the world better and protect lives, livelihoods, and property. So with that, I will turn it over to Katie, who has our audience questions coming in. Keep them coming, and who will ask directed to people. Please keep your responses to 1 minute. Try and give short questions, answers, so we can get to many questions. Katie, to you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Kapnick. Our first question is, this year's science report highlighted that incorporating diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility into every aspect of NOAA R&D is crucial to success. Can the panel elaborate on the importance of DEIA for the success of NOAA R&D, specifically benefiting society?
Yes, yeah, I can share some thoughts on that. Yeah, thank you for the question. That's a great question. Yeah, NOAA and lots of other agencies are prioritizing DEI more and more. And, you know, just as an example, I mean, you've heard a lot of the panelists talk about how it weaves into their work. And just from my perspective, through the work we demonstrated, about how engaging with multiple knowledge systems can create opportunities to cultivate conversations that span ways of knowing and bring together what can be very diverse perspectives to move understanding forward. This is an example of how we embrace both broadening participation and stakeholder engagement as key values for this study. And these values are integrated into the research design, and the outputs reflect that these themes were included throughout all phases of our study and in many of the studies that you've heard the folks talk here today on the panel about. And we recognize that when new voices are considered as the science of climate adaptation and resilience is developing, new and better ideas can emerge. And that's important because research that integrates broadening participation activities has shown the potential to not only help broaden the use of decision support tools, but fundamentally impact how community adaptation planning is conducted and who is involved in the development of those ideas that lead to innovations in improving community resilience.
Great, thank you. If no one else wants to chime in, I will move on to our next question. Our next question is specifically for Kim. What challenges have you had in translating or applying the wet bulb forecasts to public use?
Thanks for the question. Well, the wet bulb globe temperature is a little more complex than the traditionally and more commonly known heat index or ambient air temperature. So heat index takes into account relative humidity and the temperature, but wet bulb globe temperature includes wind as well as solar radiation. So it can be a little more complex to understand, especially since solar radiation itself takes into account the cloudiness as well as the sun angle. And because of the account for wind, the wet bulb globe temperature can actually be a lower number than the heat index or the ambient air temperature. So that can give people a false sense of that the heat may not be a danger, but that's really where we at the local forecast offices are able to educate our partners through our impact-based decision support services and make sure that there is a general understanding of what the wet bulb globe temperature means, and we utilize 5 different categories to help express what is the level of heat stress danger through the wet bulb globe temperature. So overall, heat stress is complicated, but then having these different tools may be not as well understood, but we continue to educate through our partnerships, with academia, as well as our local emergency management partners and public health officials.
Thank you so much, Kim. Our next question is, can the panel describe some critical points in the R&D process that help achieve impacts?
Would you please rephrase the question a little bit?
Yes, I will. Let me look at that again. Okay, can the panel describe some critical points in the R&D process that help achieve impactful, let's rephrase that, impactful R&D outputs?
I can
If
take
I
the
could.
question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so whenever we are developing a project, there are many critical steps along the way when we do our research and development. One thing to realize is that when we are working with satellite data, especially, what is useful for one application may be an interference for another application. So if we take clouds, for example, clouds are important, no doubt, and we need to monitor them. But to monitor fine particulate pollution or aerosols, like in our case, we have to effectively identify and remove clouds. So we worry about cloud contamination and interference in our retrievals quite a bit. So we do spend a lot of time evaluating the product by comparing to ground observations, not only during the development phase, but also during the transition phase into operations, and continue that for the life of the mission. So basically, I'm trying to say the critical element for my type of work is really to evaluate and validate the product so we can give confidence to the user.
Thank you, Shobha. And I am going to let everyone know we're right on time. So we have one last question. What do you say to aspiring researchers who hope to emulate your success? And please keep your answers brief.
I'll jump in really quickly and just say, find people that are doing what you want to be doing or something you're inspired by, and ask them to help you. And none of us got here on our own. Not a single person here got here on our own. We got here because people were willing to help us, and that's now our jobs to help others as well in the positions that we're in. And so find people that are willing to help you. And if somebody says no, which is hard, and you will experience that, find someone else, because we're out there. That's what I would say.
I'd like to add to Noelle's comment, reach out to the people that your research is intended for to understand and make sure you're meeting their needs and that it's communicated to them in a way that they can use it.
Yeah, and I'll just build on that. Noelle and Kimberly had both great advice, and all I have to add is that you know, in this type of work that we're talking about, this applied research and working with partners, community partners, and building trust, you know, the thing that's worked for many who do this type of work is, you know, identify your expertise, your niche, to meet that local need, but don't be limited by it. You know, once you get in and work with a collaborating community, it can go many different directions. And if flexibility would be a really great attribute in a researcher who's doing this type of work, because we've all had to be flexible and adapt and pivot, you know, to storm impacts, you know, pandemic, anything that's thrown our way. And you know, working, and we've talked about it before, this lends itself, these issues and these needs lends itself to the transdisciplinary research approach. So yeah, I'm an environmental scientist, but I partner with social scientists on these projects, and I've learned a great deal from them. And that knowledge transfer, be opening to learning, be flexible, and don't be limited by your niche, even though that's how you may get in the door and started.
Okay. Since we're at time, as you can tell, we're all very enthusiastic and excited about this research, and we all want to encourage the next generation of scientists and researchers to come join us in this work, be it through partners or working at NOAA. So with this, this report is both a showcase of our science advancements and testament to the commitment of NOAA's workforce as you've seen them today. Thank you to all who have contributed to NOAA scientific advancements, often only completed after years of work. And thank you to the writing team who have built this document to identify and to celebrate NOAA science. I want to thank the 6 panelists today for sharing their research with us and ultimately helping NOAA better serve the American people. Again, you can find the report on the Science Council's website. There's also a link in the chat. And continue to explore the stories we heard today. And you can also read up on dozens of other exciting scientific highlights for the last year. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.